This episode is brought to you by our friends at Hover, the easiest way to buy domain names and do more with them. Get 10% off today by visiting hover.com/MrMobile.
Hi, I'm Jay Goldman, and you are watching Mr. Mobile on Butterscotch.com. Today, a look at a very fancy digital picture frame. No, just kidding. This is an Apple iPad. That's right. It is now available, at least in the Wi-Fi version, which is what I'm holding in my hand. And today, we are going to take a look at the hardware of the device. Tune in an upcoming episode for a look at all of the software that comes on it. So let's talk about this display. This is a beautiful 9.7-inch diagonal display. It runs at 1024 by 768, which is pretty high res. Now, this is 4:3 aspect ratio, which is what you'd find on an older television set. All the new TVs that run in HD run in a 16:9 aspect ratio, which is what CDs and DVDs and movies display in. So when you're watching a video on here, you either have it in letterbox format or in sort of expanded full screen format, but it's not a native 16:9 resolution. I will say, though, that that doesn't matter. The screen is beautiful, very vibrant, great colors. When you're looking at photographs on here, it's stunning. And it doesn't even so much matter that the video is in letterbox because the image is so great. In terms of resolution, this is a 132 dpi screen. The iPhone is 163, so this is actually slightly lower res than the iPhone, but again, it doesn't matter. Beautiful image. In terms of the technology in here, this is the same bright LCD that they're using in the new MacBook Pros. It uses a technology called in-plane switching, or IPS, which is what we've actually seen in the latest iMacs, and makes for an incredibly wide viewing angle. So you can actually look almost entirely sideways at this device and still read the screen really bright. IPS is a little bit higher energy consumption than some of the other LCD technologies, but that doesn't actually matter all that much on here because the battery life in this thing is pretty amazing. We'll talk about that in a moment. I will say that the screen gets covered in fingerprints really easily. You'll find yourself wiping it quite a lot. Make sure you're using a microfiber cloth when you're doing that. But the nice thing is, it has the same oleophobic coating as the 3GS does, which means that it's really easy to clean. So we just take our microfiber cloth and give it a quick wipe like this, and all the fingerprints will come right off. In terms of controls on it, it's following in Apple's pretty standard minimalist hardware design. So there are only 4 physical controls on here. We've got the home button in the same placement as on the iPhones, so it's down at the bottom of the screen here. We've also got a power switch on the top, sort of the same place as the iPhone does. And up here we've also got our headphone jack. And then on the side of the device here, we've got a volume rocker, so I can rock that up and down. And we've also got a lock button here, which I wish that my iPhone had. This is the orientation lock on the screen. So when I've got it in, say, landscape mode, like so, I can keep it locked in landscape mode, and when I turn the device, it doesn't actually rotate the screen back. The main reason you want this is for when you're lying in bed reading stuff on here, so you're not constantly playing with it, trying to get it to stay in one orientation, as I'm sure you've discovered if you have an iPhone. So we're hoping that that comes up on the next generation iPhone. Again, as I mentioned, headphone jack on the top. That works with the iPhone and MacBook headphones that have a remote control on it, but there are no headphones in the box with this. So if you're buying one from Apple, you may want to consider ordering a set of those headphones on their own. Weighs 1.5 pounds, or 0.68 kilograms. It's a little heavier than I expected it to feel, and I would imagine that if you're lying in bed trying to read a book for a long time, it's sort of like holding a heavy hardcover book in your hand. So maybe a little bit heavy on that angle, but compared to most of the netbooks that are out there, it's about half the weight that they are. So it's lighter than a netbook, a little heavier than I would have preferred, but again, you can't really complain that much. The back has a unibody aluminum construction that we've seen on all the latest MacBooks and MacBook Air from Apple. And so that means it's pretty much a single piece of aluminum that wraps all the way around. The construction on this thing is gorgeous. It's exactly what you'd expect from an Apple device, pretty much. So there's really no visible seams. There are no screws. You're not going to find anything like that. Down on the bottom edge here, we've got a built-in mic and a built-in speaker. And so the speaker's pretty good. You play a video, you can hear it pretty well. You might find yourself doing what a lot of iPhone users have found that they have to do, which is sort of cup the screen like this to redirect the sound back to you. But as long as you're doing that, and it's a pretty comfortable way to hold it, you'll get pretty good audio out of it. Following in Apple's recent footsteps from an environmental perspective, this device is actually great. Arsenic-free display, BFR-free, mercury-free LCD display, PVC-free, recyclable aluminum case and glass enclosure. So Apple used to have a really bad rep when it came to environmental things, taking big steps forward here. This follows in the same. Now, talk about battery life. Normally when you buy some hardware from somebody and they say, oh, it's got a 6-hour battery, you can expect that it's really got about a 4-hour battery under normal use. Early reports, and what we've found at Butterscotch, is that this thing actually gets 10 hours out of the battery, and in fact, in some cases gets more than 10, which has got to be the only device we've ever reviewed that actually exceeds the manufacturer's suggested length of time for the battery. So the battery in here has 5.5 times the capacity of the iPhone battery. We've seen some of the teardown stuff online. You can certainly find it if you're looking for it. Just Google iPad teardown. You can see a picture of it. The battery inside is pretty much this whole area. So it's a large battery. It accounts for a lot of the weight in here, and it lasts for a good 10 hours of normal use. Because it does take a little more charge than an iPhone does, it comes with a 10-watt adapter. The iPhone's is 5, and so you can charge it on an iPhone's adapter. It'll charge a little bit lower. And because of that 10-watt adapter, you might find when you plug it into certain USB ports that are lower powered, you're not going to get charging on here. So it'll say it'll say not charging even though you're plugged in over USB. So just find a USB port that's better powered. Included in here is an accelerometer. That's what allows us to do the screen rotation and play fun games on it. Same thing as an iPhone. There's no GPS in this unit. It does use the Skyhook data that has been built into the iPhone OS since the beginning to do location. So maps will actually locate you on here even though there's no GPS. But you might find if you're in an area with low Wi-Fi coverage, the location doesn't work nearly as well. That's pretty much all you're going to find in the box. There are a bunch of accessories available from Apple. They've got a keyboard dock that lets you pop this on there and get a keyboard underneath it. They've also got a normal dock that doesn't include that if you just want something to stand it on. Both of those will only keep it in portrait orientation though, because they fit into the standard 30-pin iPod connector on the bottom. They have a great case that's got a microfiber interior to protect your screen, and you can actually fold that back and it doubles as a stand. That allows you to keep it in landscape. So if you're going to be, say, flying on airplanes or watching a lot of video, you might want to take a look at that case. There's a camera connection kit which pops into the bottom and allows you to plug your camera memory cards directly in here and upload your photos. So if you're a photographer, that might be a really great solution for you in the field. Pop it on here, pull photos off, be able to look at them on the screen in the Photos app. And there's a VGA connector if you want to connect it to a TV and that kind of thing. One great tip, this works with Bluetooth keyboards. So if you've got a Bluetooth keyboard at home already, or you're looking to buy a keyboard for it and don't want the dock, take a look at Bluetooth solutions, especially Apple's wireless keyboard, which is really nice and small. And you can connect it directly to this Parrot and then use it directly with the device, so much better than typing on the on-screen. Also, all of your keyboard editing and navigation shortcuts like arrows and holding down Command and arrow to select, Command-C, X and V to copy and paste, and that kind of thing will all work on here, so it makes text editing a lot easier. This is the Wi-Fi model, so there's no 3G in here. 16 gigabyte, $499. 32 gigabyte, $599. 64 gigabyte, $699. You can see the pricing trend in there. The 3G model will be shipping in late April, and that'll give you wireless access from your carrier wherever you go. You're going to pay a premium for it, though. The 16 gig version is $629, $729 for the 32, and $829 for the 64. You're probably going to want to look at the 3G version if you think you're going to need wireless access not around a Wi-Fi point. Early reports, and certainly what we've found so far, is that unfortunately this can't tether to an iPhone. So that would have been a great solution. A lot of the people who are going to be carrying this are already carrying an iPhone, and that would have allowed them to use the iPhone's data connection. Unfortunately, Apple saw through that one and doesn't allow us to do that. But there's been some great reports of using MiFi devices, which are a little 3G box that creates a wireless or Wi-Fi connection, and then you can connect the iPad to that. So if your carrier provides one of those, you might want to look at it and save yourself some money and buy the Wi-Fi version of the iPad instead. So check out next week's show for a review of the iPad OS and some of the software that comes on it. And by the way, if you're looking for an easier way to get a web domain, take a look at hover.com and use the coupon code for Mr. Mobile fans. That will get you 10% off. You can see the code on screen or in the show notes on butterscotch.com. I'm Jay Goldman. This has been Mr. Mobile on butterscotch.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.
This episode is brought to you by our friends at Hover, the easiest way to buy domain names and do more with them. Get 10% off today by visiting hover.com/MrMobile.